The rain lashed against the grimy windowpane of the small, rented apartment in São Paulo, mirroring the storm brewing inside Lucas Almeida. Each drop seemed to echo the relentless drumming of his own despair. Outside, the city, usually a vibrant symphony of honking cars and distant samba, was muted, cloaked in a gray, unforgiving shroud. Inside, the silence was deafening, broken only by the rhythmic tick of a cheap wall clock, marking the passage of a life that was rapidly unraveling. Just weeks ago, Lucas had been a man of purpose, a diligent middle manager in a promising import-export firm. He wasn't wealthy, but he was comfortable, his modest salary providing a decent life for himself and his dreams of a future family. He had a small car, a steady girlfriend, and the quiet confidence that comes from hard work and stability. Then, the economic crisis hit Brazil like a sudden, brutal wave. Companies folded, jobs vanished, and the once solid ground beneath Lucas's feet turned to quicksand. The termination letter, cold and impersonal, had been the first blow. He remembered the sterile office, the sympathetic but firm gaze of his HR manager, the hollow echo of his own name as it was uttered with regret. He'd walked out into the blinding midday sun, feeling strangely detached, as if watching a scene unfold from a distance. The world kept spinning, but his had stopped. Days bled into weeks, weeks into a month of fruitless job searching. Each rejection chipped away at his spirit, leaving him raw and exposed. The savings dwindled, the rent became a monstrous, unpayable sum. His girlfriend, once a beacon of support, grew distant, her patience worn thin by his growing despondency. One Tuesday morning, she left, a brief note on the kitchen counter, a final, crushing blow that severed his last tether to normalcy. Now, the eviction notice was taped to his door, a stark white rectangle against the peeling paint. His landlord, a man whose face was usually creased with a jovial smile, had looked at him with pity, a look Lucas found harder to bear than anger. He packed the few belongings he had left into a single worn suitcase, a faded photograph of his parents, a tattered copy of a book on Brazilian history, and a small wooden carving of Christ the Redeemer, a gift from his grandmother. The rest, the furniture, the appliances, the remnants of a life, would be left behind, swallowed by the indifferent city. As he stepped out onto the rain-slicked street, the suitcase heavy in his hand, Lucas felt a profound emptiness. The city lights blurred through the downpour, each one a distant, unreachable star. He was adrift, stripped bare of everything he had built, everything he had known. He was just another face in the teeming millions, a ghost in the urban sprawl. He had hit rock bottom, and the only way to go was up, though at that moment, the path was utterly invisible. The true measure of a man is not where he stands in moments of comfort and convenience, but where he stands at times of challenge and controversy. Lucas stumbled through the labyrinthine streets of São Paulo, the city's ceaseless rhythm a mocking counterpoint to the emptiness in his stomach and soul. The rain had finally ceased, leaving behind a humid, oppressive air that clung to his skin. His worn shoes slapped against the wet pavement, each step a testament to his aimless wandering. He passed by bustling cafes, the aroma of strong coffee and freshly baked pão de queijo a cruel reminder of what he had lost. The vibrant murals adorning the city walls, once a source of fascination, now seemed to mock his gray existence. He was invisible, a shadow amidst the vibrant tapestry of life. His journey led him to a quieter, older part of the city, near a bustling market where the air was thick with the scent of exotic fruits and spices. There, tucked away from the main thoroughfare, sat an elderly woman behind a small, makeshift stall. Her face was a roadmap of wrinkles, etched by years of sun and laughter, but her eyes held a warmth that drew Lucas in. She was Dona Clara, and her stall was adorned with an array of colorful, intricately woven bracelets and small, carved wooden figures. She noticed Lucas, not with pity, but with a quiet understanding. "Você está com fome, meu filho?" she asked, her voice raspy but kind, offering him a small, warm pastry wrapped in a napkin. Lucas, too proud to beg but too hungry to refuse, nodded silently, tears pricking his eyes. The simple act of kindness was a balm to his wounded spirit. As he ate, she spoke, her words flowing like a gentle river. "A vida é como este mercado, Lucas. she began, gesturing around them. Kaya de necessidades. As pessoas vem aqui procurando algo. Bom tomate, peaks fresco, present para enquirido. Meu trabalho neo é apenas vender estas pulseiras. Meu trabalho é ver o que as pessoas precisam, e então criar algo que preencha essa necessidade. O dinheiro, she paused, her gaze steady. O dinheiro segue o valor que você cria. Sempre. Her words struck Lucas with the force of a revelation. He had always thought of money as something earned through a job, a salary, a fixed exchange for his time. He had never considered it as a direct consequence of value created. He had been a cog in a large machine, and when the machine broke, he was useless. But Dona Clara, with her simple stall and her profound wisdom, was showing him a different path. She was not waiting for a job, she was creating her own value, day by day, piece by piece. He spent the rest of the afternoon observing her, asking hesitant questions. She explained how she sourced her materials, how she understood what her customers wanted, how she built relationships. She spoke of resilience, of starting over, of finding dignity in honest work, no matter how small. As the sun began to dip below the city skyline, painting the clouds in hues of orange and purple, Lucas felt a faint stirring within him, a tiny ember of hope in the ashes of his despair. He had lost everything, but in the dust of his failure, a seed of understanding had been planted. True wealth is not found in what you possess, but in the value you create for others. The morning after his encounter with Dona Clara, Lucas woke with a purpose he hadn't felt in weeks. The gnawing emptiness in his stomach was still there, but now it was accompanied by a flicker of resolve. He spent hours watching Dona Clara, absorbing her quiet efficiency, the way she greeted each customer, the pride she took in her simple wares. He saw how she transformed raw materials into something of value, and how that value, in turn, brought her a livelihood. With the last few crumpled reis in his pocket, Lucas made his way to a wholesaler he'd seen Dona Clara frequent. He bought a small bag of peanuts and a handful of cheap, colorful hair ties. It was a meager inventory, almost laughable compared to the life he once led, but it was a start. He found a spot near a busy bus stop, a little removed from Dona Clara's territory, and laid out his goods on a clean cloth. The first few hours were agonizing. His voice, once confident in boardrooms, now faltered as he mumbled his prices. Rejection stung, each dismissive glance a fresh wound. But then, a young woman, rushing to catch her bus, paused. She needed a hair tie. Lucas, summoning a newfound courage, offered her a choice, a small smile touching his lips. She bought one. The exchange was brief, but the feeling it ignited in Lucas was profound. It wasn't just the few coins, it was the validation of Dona Clara's words. He had identified a need, provided a solution, and value had been exchanged. Money had followed value. That evening, as he counted his meager earnings, Lucas felt a quiet pride. It wasn't much, barely enough for a simple meal, but it was his. He bought a cheap notebook and a pen, and in the dim light of a street lamp, he began to write. He outlined his observations, his small successes, his failures. He started visiting the public library, devouring books on business, marketing, and economics. He learned about supply and demand, customer service, and the power of persistence. He was no longer just selling peanuts. He was studying the intricate dance of commerce. One night, under the vast, indifferent São Paulo sky, Lucas made a solemn promise to himself. He would rebuild. Not just his finances, but his life. He would build it on the principles of value creation, integrity, and relentless learning. He would not just survive. He would thrive, not for the sake of accumulating wealth, but for the purpose it could bring. This was not a return to his old life, but the forging of a new one, tempered by humility and fueled by a burning, quiet determination. The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step, but it is the unwavering commitment to that journey that truly defines its destination. The initial spark of hope that had ignited in Lucas slowly began to flicker under the relentless pressure of reality. His small venture, born of desperation and fueled by newfound knowledge, was a constant uphill battle. Some days, the sun beat down mercilessly, wilting his produce and his spirit. Other days, the rain, a familiar adversary, drove customers away, leaving him soaked and disheartened. He encountered rude customers who haggled aggressively, or worse, dismissed him with a wave of their hand, making him feel like the invisible man he had been just weeks before. He had moved into a cramped, shared room in a favela on the outskirts of the city, the cacophony of barking dogs, distant music, and shouting neighbors a constant assault on his frayed nerves. The library, once a sanctuary of learning, now felt like a distant dream. Exhaustion became his constant companion, his body aching from long hours on his feet, his mind weary from the endless calculations of profit margins and inventory. There were moments, late at night, when the despair would creep back in, whispering doubts in his ear. Was he truly meant for this? Was he destined to fail, again and again? One particularly brutal week, a flu epidemic swept through the city, emptying the streets and leaving Lucas with unsold goods and an empty stomach. He sat on the edge of his cot, the dim light of a single bulb casting long, distorted shadows on the wall. He was cold, hungry, and utterly defeated. He thought of giving up, of finding some menial labor, anything to escape the crushing weight of his ambition. He closed his eyes, picturing the comfortable life he once had, the steady paycheck, the warm bed. The contrast was a physical ache. As he rummaged through his worn suitcase, searching for a clean shirt, his fingers brushed against a thick, aged envelope tucked beneath his few belongings. It was an old letter, unopened, from his father. His father, a quiet, hard-working man who had passed away years ago, had written it shortly before his death, instructing Lucas's mother to give it to him when he faced a significant challenge. Lucas had forgotten all about it. With trembling hands, he tore open the seal. The paper was yellowed, the ink slightly faded, but his father's familiar, careful handwriting was unmistakable. The letter spoke not of wealth or success, but of resilience, of the Almeida family's enduring spirit, of the strength found in humility and perseverance. It reminded him that true failure was not falling, but refusing to rise. It spoke of the deep roots of their family, stretching back generations, each one overcoming their own storms. His father's words were a gentle hand on his shoulder, a voice from the past reminding him of who he was and what he was capable of. Clutching the letter to his chest, Lucas felt a warmth spread through him, chasing away the cold despair. His father's words were not just a memory, but a compass guiding him through the storm, reminding him that the greatest inheritance was not money, but character. Even in the deepest valleys of despair, the echoes of our past wisdom can illuminate the path forward. Inspired by his father's words, Lucas pushed through the lingering despair, his resolve hardened. He understood that his current struggles were not a sign of inherent failure, but a test of his commitment. He continued his small business, but his hunger for knowledge grew. He realized that while Dona Clara had taught him the essence of value creation, he needed a deeper understanding of the broader economic landscape, of how true, sustainable wealth was built and preserved. He sought out free community workshops and public lectures, often traveling long distances after a full day of selling, his mind eager to absorb every scrap of information. It was at one such lecture, held in a modest community center, that Lucas first saw Raphael. The room was filled with aspiring entrepreneurs and small business owners, but Raphael stood out. He was an older man, impeccably dressed yet without ostentation, his silver hair neatly combed, his eyes sharp and intelligent. He wasn't a charismatic speaker, but his words carried the weight of experience and profound wisdom. He spoke not of quick riches, but of patience, of understanding market cycles, of the difference between speculation and investment, and above all, of integrity as the bedrock of any lasting success. After the lecture, Lucas, usually reserved, felt an irresistible pull to approach Raphael. He waited patiently as others clamored for a moment of the elder man's time. When his turn came, Lucas, his voice still a little rough from the streets, simply introduced himself and thanked Raphael for his insights. He mentioned his small business, his struggles, and his desire to learn more about building something truly meaningful. Raphael listened intently, a slight, knowing smile playing on his lips. He saw not just a young man seeking advice, but a spirit forged in adversity, a mind hungry for genuine understanding. Their first meeting was brief, a promise of a future conversation over coffee. Lucas, almost giddy with a mix of awe and excitement, could barely believe his luck. Over the next few months, these coffee meetings turned into regular sessions. Raphael, a retired investor who had built his fortune through shrewd, ethical decisions and then dedicated his later years to philanthropy, took Lucas under his wing. They met in quiet cafes, in Raphael's elegant but unpretentious study, or sometimes, simply on a park bench overlooking the bustling city. Raphael didn't just dispense advice, he taught principles. He explained the psychology of money, how fear and greed often drove irrational decisions. He spoke of the power of compounding, the importance of delayed gratification, and the necessity of building a strong financial foundation before chasing fleeting opportunities. He taught Lucas to read financial statements, to understand economic indicators, and to see the long game. But more than anything, Raphael emphasized that true wealth was not merely an accumulation of assets, but a reflection of the value one created, the problems one solved, and the integrity with which one conducted business. He taught Lucas that the market was a mirror, reflecting back the honesty and effort put into it. One afternoon, as the sun streamed through the window of his study, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air, Raphael handed Lucas a worn copy of Adam Smith's The Wealth of Nations. "This," he said, his eyes twinkling, "is where it all begins. Not with money, Lucas, but with understanding. You have the heart, now you need the map." Lucas clutched the book, a profound sense of gratitude washing over him. He knew this was more than just a book. It was a key, and Raphael was showing him how to use it. The greatest inheritance a mentor can bestow is not wealth, but the wisdom to create it with purpose and integrity. Armed with Raphael's wisdom and his own hard-earned experience, Lucas began to see the city not as a place of endless struggle, but as a vibrant ecosystem of unmet needs and opportunities. He spent weeks observing, listening, and analyzing. His small peanut and hair tie business had taught him the fundamentals of direct sales and customer interaction, but Raphael's lessons had broadened his perspective. He started to notice the gaps, the inefficiencies, the places where value could be created and exchanged more effectively. He identified a genuine need in his community: access to affordable, high-quality, locally sourced produce. The large supermarkets were expensive, and the smaller local vendors often struggled with consistency and fair pricing. Lucas envisioned a small, community-focused market, a place where local farmers could sell their fresh goods directly to consumers, cutting out intermediaries and ensuring fair prices for both producers and buyers. It wasn't just about selling, it was about building a bridge, fostering connections, and supporting the local economy. This vision, born of his own struggles and Raphael's teachings, became his driving force. He meticulously drafted a business plan, poring over every detail, every potential challenge. He presented it to Raphael, who, after a thorough review, offered not just encouragement, but also a small, interest-free loan, a gesture of faith that solidified Lucas's resolve. He also pooled resources with a few trusted individuals from his community, people who believed in his vision and were willing to invest their time and meager savings. Finding the right location was a challenge, but Lucas, now adept at navigating the city's bureaucracy, secured a small, abandoned storefront in a bustling neighborhood. He and his partners worked tirelessly, cleaning, painting, and building shelves from reclaimed wood. Donna Clara, with her quiet strength, offered advice on display and customer engagement. The air buzzed with anticipation, a mix of excitement and trepidation. Lucas felt the weight of responsibility, but it was a welcome burden, a testament to his purpose. The grand opening day arrived, a bright, sunny Saturday. The aroma of fresh fruits, vegetables, and artisanal breads filled the air. Local musicians played lively samba tunes, drawing curious passers-by. Donna Clara was there, beaming with pride, as were Raphael, his eyes reflecting a quiet satisfaction. The first customers trickled in, then a steady stream, their faces lighting up at the sight of the fresh produce and the friendly atmosphere. Lucas, standing behind the counter, greeted each one with a genuine smile, his heart swelling with a profound sense of accomplishment. As the sun began to dip below the horizon, casting long shadows across the bustling market, Lucas looked at his vibrant shop. It was more than just a business. It was a promise kept, a testament to resilience, and a beacon of hope for his community. He had not just built a store, he had built a foundation for a new life, rooted in purpose and trust. True enterprise is not merely about profit, but about identifying a need and serving it with integrity, thereby creating value that resonates far beyond the transaction. Lucas's community market, christened Mercado de Esperanza, Market of Hope, flourished. Word spread quickly about its fresh produce, fair prices, and the genuine warmth of its owner. The once abandoned storefront now hummed with life, a vibrant hub where neighbors reconnected and local farmers found a reliable outlet for their goods. Lucas, no longer just a vendor, was a respected figure, his days filled with a satisfying rhythm of honest work and meaningful interactions. His initial small investment had grown, allowing him to expand his offerings and even hire a few local youths, giving them their first taste of dignified employment. His success, however, did not go unnoticed. São Paulo, a city of relentless ambition, was also a magnet for those seeking to capitalize on others' hard work. One sweltering afternoon, a sleek, dark car pulled up outside the Mercado. Two men, impeccably dressed in expensive suits that seemed out of place amidst the market's earthy bustle, entered. They introduced themselves as representatives of a larger, less scrupulous distribution network, their smiles too wide, their eyes too calculating. They offered Lucas a deal, significantly higher profits, faster expansion, and a guaranteed market for his produce, but with a catch. He would have to source his goods from their network, which often involved questionable origins and exploitative labor practices, and compromise on the quality he had so painstakingly built his reputation upon. The offer was tempting. The numbers they presented were staggering, far beyond anything Lucas had imagined in his wildest dreams. He remembered the gnawing hunger, the cold despair of his past, the fear of never escaping poverty. A part of him, the part that still bore the scars of rock bottom, yearned for that quick, decisive leap to financial security. He could buy a real home, provide for his future family, escape the constant worry. The sleek suits and their persuasive words painted a vivid picture of a life free from struggle, a life he had once only dreamed of. He spent days wrestling with the decision. The allure of rapid wealth was a powerful current, threatening to pull him away from the steady, ethical course he had charted. He walked through his bustling market, observing the genuine smiles of his customers, the pride in the eyes of his local suppliers. He thought of Dona Clara's simple wisdom: money follows value. He thought of Raphael's calm voice, echoing in his mind: true wealth is built on principles, not just profits. Integrity is your most valuable asset. Raphael had warned him about the siren song of quick money, the illusion of shortcuts that often led to ruin. One evening, sitting in his small office, the scent of fresh earth and ripe fruit a comforting presence, Lucas made his choice. He politely but firmly declined the offer. The men in suits left, their smiles replaced by thinly veiled contempt, muttering about missed opportunities. Lucas felt a profound sense of relief, a quiet strength settling within him. He knew he had chosen the harder path, the slower path, but it was his path, built on the values he now held dear. He understood that true discipline wasn't just about working hard, but about saying no to what didn't align with his purpose, even when it promised easy gains. The true test of character is not in resisting temptation when it is weak, but when it is at its most alluring. Years passed, and Mercado de Esperanza thrived, a testament to Lucas's vision and unwavering principles. He had expanded thoughtfully, opening a second, smaller outpost in a neighboring district, always prioritizing quality, community, and fair trade. His financial foundation, meticulously built with Raphael's guidance, was robust. He had diversified his investments, maintained a healthy emergency fund, and fostered deep, trusting relationships with his suppliers and customers. He was no longer just surviving. He was building, creating, and contributing. Then, the whispers began. First, distant rumblings from international markets, then closer, more urgent murmurs about a new global economic slowdown. Brazil, ever susceptible to external shocks, felt the tremors almost immediately. The news channels, once filled with stories of growth, now broadcast grim reports of rising inflation, plummeting consumer confidence, and widespread layoffs. Lucas watched, a familiar knot tightening in his stomach, but this time it was different. There was no panic, no overwhelming despair, only a quiet, steely resolve. The crisis hit hard. Supply chains faltered, prices for essential goods soared, and many of his customers, facing their own financial hardships, had less to spend. The vibrant energy of the mercado dimmed, replaced by a palpable anxiety. Lucas saw the fear in people's eyes, a reflection of his own past. But unlike his first fall, he was not caught unprepared. His emergency fund provided a buffer, allowing him to absorb losses and continue paying his employees, even as sales dipped. His strong relationships with local farmers meant they prioritized supplying him, trusting his commitment to fair prices even in lean times. He called an emergency meeting with his small team. Instead of fear-mongering, he spoke with calm transparency, outlining the challenges but also presenting a plan. They would innovate. They introduced a community-supported agriculture (CSA) program, allowing customers to prepay for weekly baskets of produce, providing farmers with upfront capital and customers with guaranteed fresh food at a stable price. They launched a small delivery service, reaching customers who were hesitant to leave their homes. Lucas himself worked longer hours, often personally delivering orders, his presence a reassuring anchor in uncertain times. There were difficult decisions. He had to temporarily reduce some operating hours and forego his own salary for a few months, but he refused to lay off any of his employees. He remembered the dignity Dona Clara had spoken of, the importance of providing stable work. His team, inspired by his leadership and resilience, rallied around him, working harder, finding efficiencies, and supporting each other. The community, recognizing his unwavering commitment, reciprocated with loyalty, choosing Mercado de Esperança over larger, impersonal chains. Slowly, painstakingly, the Mercado weathered the storm. As the economy began its slow, arduous recovery, Mercado de Esperança emerged not just intact, but stronger, more agile, and more deeply embedded in the fabric of its community. Lucas had proven that true wealth wasn't just about accumulation, but about resilience, adaptability, and the enduring power of human connection. He had faced the abyss again, and this time, he had not only survived but had helped others to do the same. The true test of wealth is not how much you accumulate in good times, but how resilient you remain when the storms of life inevitably arrive. Years melted into decades. The small, struggling peanut vendor had transformed into Lucas Almeida, a respected entrepreneur and community leader. Mercado de Esperança had grown into a network of thriving community markets across São Paulo, each one a beacon of fair trade, local produce, and genuine connection. His financial independence was not just a dream but a tangible reality, built on the solid bedrock of Raphael's principles and his own unwavering discipline. He owned a comfortable home, not a mansion, but a place filled with warmth and laughter, where the aroma of good food often mingled with the scent of blooming jasmine from the garden. Yet, the true measure of his success, Lucas knew, was not in the balance of his bank accounts or the number of his stores. It was in the quiet moments of contentment, the deep satisfaction that permeated his days. He found profound joy in his work, not just in the numbers, but in the faces of the farmers whose livelihoods he supported, the smiles of the customers who trusted his markets, and the growth of the young people he had mentored, many of whom now held key positions in his company. His relationships, once fractured by poverty and despair, had blossomed. He had found love again, a quiet, enduring partnership built on shared values and mutual respect, and together they had built a family, raising children who understood the value of hard work and compassion. One tranquil afternoon, Lucas sat on his veranda, a gentle breeze rustling the leaves of the mango tree. The city's distant hum was a familiar lullaby, no longer a source of anxiety but a backdrop to a life well lived. He watched his grandchildren playing in the garden, their innocent laughter a melody to his ears. He reflected on his journey, the precipitous fall, the lessons learned in the dust, the storm of doubt, the guiding hand of Raphael, and the unwavering promise he had made to himself under the vast São Paulo sky. He realized that true wealth was not the absence of problems, but the capacity to face them with equanimity. It was the peace of mind that came from knowing he had built something honest and enduring. It was the freedom to choose how he spent his time, to pursue passions beyond commerce, to dedicate himself to causes he believed in. It was the profound impact he had on his community, creating opportunities, fostering dignity, and demonstrating that success could be achieved without compromising one's soul. The old scars of poverty remained, not as sources of pain, but as reminders of the crucible that had forged him. They were a testament to the fact that real success wasn't about avoiding hardship, but about transforming it into wisdom. He had sought wealth, and he had found it, but not in the way he had initially imagined. He had discovered that the richest treasures were not stored in vaults, but in the heart, in the connections forged, and in the purpose fulfilled. True wealth is not merely the abundance of possessions, but the abundance of peace, freedom, and positive impact on the world. Lucas Almeida, now a man in his late 70s, carried the wisdom of a lifetime in his gentle eyes. His silver hair, once a symbol of age, now gleamed like a crown of experience. He had long since stepped back from the day-to-day operations of Mercado de Esperança, entrusting its continued growth to a new generation of leaders he had carefully mentored. Yet, his presence remained a guiding force, his philosophy deeply embedded in the company's ethos. His days were now dedicated to a different kind of harvest, cultivating minds and nurturing dreams. Much like Raphael had done for him, Lucas became a mentor to countless aspiring entrepreneurs and individuals grappling with financial hardship. He established the Instituto Almeida, a foundation dedicated to teaching financial literacy, ethical business practices, and the principles of value creation. Its classrooms, vibrant with eager young faces, echoed with the same lessons he had learned in the dust of his own collapse. He often shared his story, not as a tale of triumph over adversity, but as a journey of continuous learning and self-discovery. He spoke of the economic crisis that had stripped him bare, the kindness of Dona Clara, the profound guidance of Raphael, and the unwavering promise he had made to himself. He emphasized that true wealth was not a destination, but a byproduct of a life lived with purpose, integrity, and a commitment to serving others. He taught them that failure was not an end, but a powerful teacher, and that resilience was the muscle built through repeated falls and comebacks. One sunny afternoon, Lucas sat on a stage at the Instituto, addressing a graduating class. His voice, though softer with age, still carried the weight of conviction. He looked out at the diverse faces before him, young, old, from all walks of life, each one carrying their own hopes and fears, their own dreams of a better future. He saw reflections of his younger self in their eager eyes, and a profound sense of peace settled over him. "Remember," he said, his gaze sweeping across the room, "the market will always reward value. Your job is to find a need, and then to fill it with all the integrity, creativity, and dedication you possess. But never forget that the greatest value you can create is not for yourself, but for your community, for your family, and for the generations that will follow. Your legacy will not be measured by the size of your bank account, but by the light you ignite in others." After the ceremony, a young woman approached him, her eyes shining with gratitude. She had started a small cooperative of artisans, inspired by his teachings, and was now providing sustainable livelihoods for dozens of families. As she spoke, Lucas smiled, a lifetime of lessons etched in his eyes. He knew that the true measure of his wealth lay not in what he had accumulated, but in the ripple effect of the wisdom he had shared, in the countless lives he had touched, and in the enduring light he had helped to kindle in the heart of Brazil. The ultimate purpose of true wealth is not personal accumulation, but the empowerment of others and the creation of a lasting legacy of light and wisdom.